and they was taking the tiger out, and so when they brought the tiger out, the tiger was okay. And then all of a sudden, the little boy and his mother was standing right there, and the tiger just grabbed for the little boy's throat. And after he did that, they were up there tussling with him, trying to get him off and everything.
That was the reaction from Jesse Higgins after seeing a little girl attacked by a 250-pound tiger. The incident happened in the heart of downtown Oklahoma City at Couch and Harvey. Employees at PhotoCat, a promotional company, were bringing the cat out of a trailer when suddenly the tiger lunged at 2-year-old Shauna Hill. The little girl was with her mother at the time, and Shauna was taken to South Community Hospital, where she is listed in stable condition, but will need plastic surgery for her face.
We were coming out here to do some shots for a thing we're going to be doing later on, and she didn't have the child put up in the truck where it should have been when we got the cat out. It's not mean, it's tame. We've done several shows with it, and the animal got a hold of the kid trying to play with it, because anything small they like to get a hold of.
The 1-year-old tiger has been used in several picture-taking sessions. Authorities will keep the tiger in their custody for 10 days. During that time, a decision will be made as to what to do with it. Ed Stewart, Action 4 in downtown Oklahoma City.
This 250-pound tiger is used for publicity stunts quite often. Owner John Ames raises exotic animals as a livelihood. Today, a publicity firm was using the animal for a promotion stunt in downtown Oklahoma City. In addition, 2-year-old Shauna Hill was hired to pose alongside the tiger for pictures. According to employees of the firm, they told Shauna's mother to put her in the truck before the cat was taken out of its cage. But the woman apparently didn't hear the warning. The animal jumped the small child, resulting in severe facial injuries. Shauna's expected to have plastic surgery. Oklahoma City zookeeper Lawrence Curtis says this kind of thing happens all too often. He's currently working with a community group in formulating some restrictions they feel the state should enforce.
It may not exactly prevent what happened today, but it would certainly go a long way towards reducing the problem of private ownership, irresponsible private ownership of exotic animals. It's just like carrying a gun. That 1-year-old tiger is potentially a dangerous animal, but it's its nature to be dangerous. You can't blame the cat.
Curtis says that in so many cases, it's the innocent bystander that's the victim.
You know, it's just a cobra. It's behaving like, but they're very venomous. And
Here it is, short and sweet. Halloween 2 is not as good as the original. The direction is not as good, and the script is weak. And once again, here's an example of a sequel not surpassing the original. That film, by the way, is the most successful independent production ever made. Halloween 2 starts where Halloween 1 ends, and that's when this guy, known as the Shape, disappears. He seemingly kills at random, but he zeroes in on Laura Strode, played by Jamie Lee Curtis. And she goes to the hospital after her encounter with the Shape, and he follows her there, so the main action of the film is in the hospital. Also continuing his role in this sequel is Donald Pleasance, portraying Dr. Loomis. He finds out what this thing is and why he's after Curtis. I found the film to be too predictable. You can see what's happening. The advertising says it's the night he came home. Well, he should have stayed out. There are lots of unnecessary scenes, such as Curtis being given a shot. We don't need to see a close-up of a needle going into an arm. Now, this is supposed to be a horror film, but in many ways it's downright funny. For example, here in this scene, when Curtis is trying to yell for help, she doesn't quite get the scream out until it's too late. I did like the music. It did add a little to the action. For an example of that, let's go back to that same scene. By the way, tonight at 8 o'clock here on Channel 4, you can see the original Halloween film, which is excellent. And 9 minutes of new footage never before seen will be added. Be sure and watch it and have a safe Halloween. I'm Dean O'Lally.
Jim Cook has been sitting in the Oklahoma City city manager's seat for 5.5 years, but has decided to call it quits and move to Saudi Arabia, where he will have the job of building a city named Yambu. Right now, the city doesn't even exist. Once completed, the city will house 125,000 oil industry employees on the Red Sea. And why is Jim Cook leaving?
I think that Jim Cook has reached a point where he can't give his full enthusiasm and effort to the Oklahoma City manager's job. He's tired and the excitement is gone.
Cook talks about what he sees for Oklahoma City's future.
The elements are all here for Oklahoma City to have a good, sound, continued enlargement, growth, and progress for the next 5 to 10 years.
Besides the city manager job being boring to Cook, the fact he will probably be earning nearly $200,000 a year is also an incentive to leave. Cook has given the city council a 4-week notice to find a replacement for a job he has lost his enthusiasm for. Ed Stewart, Action 4. There just isn't enough manpower at the Cleveland County Jail to do what the state health department wants. So says the sheriff of the county. Sheriff Bill Porter says 3 jailers are really needed to make checks inside the cells, with one man staying behind near the phone in case of trouble. County commissioners have suggested deputies double as jailers, but the sheriff says that is out of the question because of scheduling problems and proper training. In addition, there is overcrowding because the sheriff says he must take on prisoners from all over the county. And unless conditions improve, the sheriff says he will have only one alternative left.
I advised the county commissioners that I would attend the meeting at 10 o'clock on the 17th of November. And if I didn't get the manpower to run this jail properly and the safety of my personnel, I would recommend they close it, just flat close it. But in addition to that, I can say they are working towards a new jail, but that's, if they dug a hole out here today, it'd be 3 years before I could move an inmate in it. It's going to take time to build it. And in the meantime, I'm looking out for the safety of my personnel and the safety of the inmates. I don't like this brutality that goes on in the cell. It's not right. And it's overcrowded. I'm equipped to handle about 24 people, and last month I averaged 60.1. That's too many for a jail this size.
The prisoners are also becoming very annoyed by the overcrowding.
I'm ready to go to Lexington. I'm ready to get out of here.
Why do you want to get out of here?
Well, just look around you how crowded it is in here. You know, the conditions of the jail, it's hard. There's no room. There's no room. You can't even walk 10 foot without running into somebody.
Here in the Cleveland County Jail, this is not the only place where there's overcrowding. The problem is in other county jails around the state of Oklahoma. And there seems to be one common solution. That is a bond election. So the residents of this county should be facing that soon. Even if the election should pass, it would be at least 2 years before a jail is actually built. Ed Stewart, Action 4 in the Cleveland County Jail.
Over 2 years ago, when John Ains first got his exotic cats, Choctaw did not have an ordinance against his keeping them inside the city limits. But in February of 1980, a new ordinance changed the outlook. Under city law, John could no longer keep any wild or dangerous animal on a permanent basis within the boundaries of Choctaw. The city thought the problem was over in April of 1980 when ordinance violations against Ains were dismissed under a plea bargain that he would not bring any further wild-caged animals into the city. Officials say Ains kept this agreement until the beginning of this year. His menagerie of animals has continued to grow despite citations and disapproval from city officials. City officials in Choctaw say it's not really the animals they're upset about, but rather the security of the animals. They don't approve of the locks and hinges on the cages, and as well, they don't think the dirt floors provide adequate protection to keep the animals within bounds.
Primary concern that I have is carrying out the orders of the city council, and they want the animals removed due to a safety factor for our citizens.
Last night, the Choctaw City Council voted to proceed with a temporary restraining order against Ains to get the animals immediately removed. This afternoon, the papers were signed by the Choctaw City Manager and Police Chief and then filed in the Oklahoma County District Court. Ains will be notified tomorrow of the injunction hearing date, but John says he plans to appeal all attempts to get rid of his animals. Carol Lambert, Action 4 in Choctaw.
I understand that some of our council
These Norman grand jurors recently finished 8 weeks of deliberation. They investigated a number of aspects of Norman city government. The grand jury did not return any criminal indictments. However, it did recommend the immediate suspension of 2 city councilmen. William Hardwick was accused of failing to report campaign contributions during the last municipal election. Frank Gatewood, who is also a member of the Norman Chamber of Commerce, was accused of a conflict of interest because he voted on a contract between the chamber and the city. Yesterday, a state district court judge dismissed both allegations. The judge said the allegations against Hardwick were a city matter, and he ruled that Gatewood's vote did not constitute a conflict of interest. The councilmen were obviously pleased with the court's ruling.
So I'm glad that the accusations against me have been dismissed and that I have been exonerated. But you know, the real problem is that the damage has already been done. That is, I'm a lawyer here in town. I practice law. I hope to be a good one and make a living, in part at least, off my reputation. And when somebody casts disparagements upon my reputation, that hurts.
Gatewood says state law makes it too easy to convene a grand jury in Oklahoma. For example, it only took a few hundred signatures on a petition to start the grand jury investigation into his alleged conflict of interest. And Gatewood says it shouldn't be that easy to destroy a person's reputation. Scott Wallace, Action 4 in Norman.
For 2 weeks, more police officers have rounded up what they say are major drug dealers from their own city and surrounding areas. Tonight, they were bringing a 6-month investigation to a close with the arrest of 8 more people. How much longer is this going to go on?
Forever. You know, as long as there's narcotics, I think. We'll have to have the unit and stolen property. We'll be working both. And this phase here, I think we've netted $40,000 worth of narcotics and stolen property and took it off the street or got it to its back to its owners. I think on one stolen property deal alone was $16,000 worth of property that went back to the rightful owner.
A total of 67 charges were filed in the investigation and more than 30 people have been arrested. The 2 undercover officers responsible for these arrests will now go back to uniform duty, but officials say there are others willing to take up where they left off. Ted Brown, Action 4, and more.
Scott Johnson has been assistant city manager for Oklahoma City the last 5 years. Now that the city manager has resigned, Johnson would like to move up to that job. He feels he is qualified because he knows what Oklahoma City needs. But the decision lies with the city council. At least 6 votes are needed to appoint a new city manager. The job will pay $55,000 a year. Councilman Jack Cornett says he'd much rather see Johnson as an interim city manager for a few months before he could decide if Johnson can handle the job.
We have seen Scott Johnson act as assistant city manager, and he's been very good at it. But there is a slight difference in being assistant than number 1 man. And I believe in giving the man a chance and try him out. This is a fair approach to both Mr. Johnson and to the city of Oklahoma City.
However, Councilman Bob Frank says he can see no other logical choice but to officially make Johnson the new city manager at the next council meeting.
In view of Mr. Johnson's background, in view of his experience, the fact that he is here, the obvious morale factor that would involve city employees if we went out and hired somebody, that we avoid going out and spending money screening people, interviewing people, and make Mr. Johnson the permanent city manager.
There are more than 4,000 employees that work more or less for the city manager, and a budget of about $143 million must skillfully be used by the city manager's office. Salaries for workers is becoming a major part of what the city manager must maneuver, making sure the city is competitive. City employees should know in less than a week who will be their new boss. Ed Stewart, Action 4 at City Hall.
You won't need any inspections for that.
Who is the victim of rape? Many believe it's the alluringly dressed woman who is attacked by a sexually aroused man. Not true. Studies show the rape victim is most often the woman most available and most vulnerable. Up to half of all sexual assaults take place in the victim's home by someone unknown to her. Her age, style of dress has no bearing. Up to 70% of rapes are planned in advance by the attacker. Many still believe rape is a crime of passion and is sexually motivated. Again, that is just not true.
Rape is a crime of violence. Rape is the way that a rapist, it's a tool that a rapist uses to often to ventilate anger, to ventilate whatever feelings that he's not able to handle. So it has nothing to do with sexual impulses or what a girl has on or how sexually attractive she is. It's a crime of violence.
Recent studies show that to think of rape as an act of sexual desire is inaccurate. This line of thought shifts responsibility to the victim.
There are individuals and there have been people and even law enforcement and prosecution up until recent years who I think realistically believe that unless you have a woman who is dead or just tremendously battered and abused, beaten to a bloody pulp, that you don't have rape, that you have to, she has to fight back with all the strength that she's got regardless of the circumstances, regardless of whether or not her child is asleep in the bed next to her, or she's out in the middle of a field 30 miles away, faced with a shotgun or a butcher knife. And that's just not real.
Another popular belief that rapes always happen in downtown dark alleys is also a myth. And while rapes may not start in desolate areas, they often end up happening here, and not always in the dark. Many women have made the mistake of leaving a club or social event with someone they've just met, not actually knowing what they've got themselves into. When a woman is sexually assaulted, some believe they asked for it, when in fact, rapists use sex to inflict their feelings of anger or power on the victim.
The North Care Center will give counseling and treatment for patients released from mental hospitals so they can recover in a community-based environment rather than a hospital. There are people wearing white coats, however, doctors and psychiatrists, to offer full-time psychiatric care. The facility does accept families, self-referrals, even people who call in on the phone. The center is new and hopes to be open 24 hours a day.
We're emphasizing in the beginning working with the seriously disturbed person, and especially the person who has been hospitalized and has returned to the community. And we want to provide aftercare, we want to work with families, and we want to assist those people to remain in the community.
Dr. King says the center was long overdue at its location. She hopes people will come there to the North Care Center instead of driving clear across town. Bella Shaw, Action 4 in Northwest Oklahoma City.
T-minus 50 seconds. The firing system for the ground suppression water is armed. Computer sequencer. We have control of the nozzles have been moved to start position. Coming up on 10, T-minus 10, 9. We have go for main engine start. We have main engine start. Minus 3, 2, 1. We have ignition. We have ignition of the solid rocket boosters and liftoff. Liftoff of America's Space Shuttle, and the Space Shuttle has cleared the tower.
Houston now controlling. Mission control confirms roll maneuver started. 20 seconds. Thrust looks good. 25 seconds. Roll maneuver completed. 30 seconds. Columbia now 1 nautical mile in altitude. 35 seconds. Status check. Mission controlled by Flight Director Neil Hutchinson. Given a go at 40 seconds. Columbia, Houston, your go at 40. Roger, go at 40. And faster on up and 48 seconds. Throttling edge down for Mexican. Ignore the master alarm, Columbia. Okay. Coming up on period of maximum aerodynamic pressure on the vehicle. Standing by now for solid rocket booster separation confirmation. 50 at 205. Roger, copy. PC less than 50. Okay, looks like we got a good SOP. Confirm good solid rocket booster separation. Smooth as glass, Houston.
For the past 16 months, the president of the Oklahoma National Stockyards and other cattlemen have been conducting business in these trailers. When fire destroyed the old Livestock Exchange building in June of 1980, George Hall and the others had to have a place to do business. So 23 trailers were moved onto a parking lot.
Instead of having a nice, convenient office to work in, we suddenly found ourselves 2 or 3 people to one small 12 by 12 office, and it makes working conditions very difficult.
Hall is eager to move into the new Livestock Exchange building. Work on the outside is 95% complete. Hall feels the adobe exterior will give the building a true Western look.
This building symbolizes the strength and the solid position that this market occupies in the livestock marketing industry, and not only in this state but in the Southwest.
Construction cost of this new building will be a little more than $2 million. 40 businesses will be housed here, including a restaurant. Move-in date is scheduled for April 1st, 1982. Ben McCain, Action 4 at the Oklahoma National Stockyards.
You gotta give us 110 now. You know, there's no tomorrow. We've got to win.
That's right.
We've got to win.
All football teams try to prepare themselves mentally for a game. The same holds true for another team, the team of officials. This is, to say the least, a unique situation. Cotton Grove and Bill Finley have been officiating football games together 27 years. These two men have officiated more state championships than any two individuals in Oklahoma. 4 years ago, they got their sons involved. Now they claim to be the only dual father-son officiating team in the world.
Let's hit the field. Let's go.
I've got all the confidence in the world in every call that they make. I never have to question it. They hustle. I believe that they're a credit to us. In fact, I know that they are. We religiously work at the rules and the interpretation of the rules and traveling to and from the different games that we have throughout the state of Oklahoma. We listen to them as well as pass on some of the experiences that we've had.
The Grove Finley officiating team stays extremely busy during football season. When people attending the games hear about the dual father-son team, they're fascinated.
As we go into those communities and they announce that we're the only father-son team around the country, they accept us wholeheartedly, and they think it's a great thing, because today when there is so much distress between families, it's kind of something that people, we think, should look to and kind of motivate them to go into the fields with their fathers.
Holding by number 75, White. I got a live ball, number 56, great hit.
Grove and Finley live and work in Oklahoma City. Grove in the automobile business, Finley in the catering business. They certainly don't do this for money. It's all pleasure, even when a game gets more exciting than usual. And the fact that these two men can enjoy all this with their sons is icing on the cake. Ben McCain, Action 4 with the Grove Finley officiating team in Guthrie.